But even when they got here, there were still some bad guys that kind of came out of the woodwork. So the vetting process was not perfect, but it's just a continual, they did interviews, they looked at the paperwork. The War Department did the best they could, and I think they did a pretty good job to weed out the really, really horrible people. Yes?
Were there camps especially in Michigan for like black shirts or the SS or anything like that?
Those guys were, if they had any affiliation like that, and by the way, they could tell SS, I think they have it tattooed under their armpit. There was, Gerd Lindemann told me, he said, I didn't like these goose-stepping guys. I was an officer in the Africa Corps, and we had these new guys come in, and they were goose-stepping, and they were cheering when they heard defeats, and so we gave them the Holy Ghost treatment, we guys that were there. We got them out of bed at night, took them into the shower, and looked under their armpits, and these guys are SS, and they were immediately shipped to high security. So anytime something like that happened, they did get them out of there. There are ways to tell, but there was still some bullying. There were a few little kangaroo courts. If you cooperated too much, or were too happy that D-Day happened, you might want to keep that quiet. Particularly the Germans, not so much the Italians.
Were there actually any camps here in Michigan, though?
Sorry?
Were there any camps in Michigan, high security, for those
No,
camps?
not really. Not high security. They got them out of here and put them out there where they put the Japanese Americans, kind of those isolated places. Yes?
Were there other countries that received prisoners?
Sure. I mean, all the Allied countries had prisoners. The problem in '43, England said, we're loaded. We don't have enough for our own people. In America, we don't know what you got to take care of these guys. So the British also, and I think the British treated the prisoners pretty well too. It made sense to treat these guys as well as we could. A, because we were signatories to the Geneva Convention, and we're the good guys, and we're democracy, but B, it made sense because we dropped leaflets behind lines saying you will be treated safe, you will get safe conduct, and some people began to believe that and gave up maybe because of that. And one final reason, there was a sense, the guys could write letters through the Red Cross, and sometimes they got through and sometimes they didn't. Sometimes everything was censored out of them. But the idea was if we treat the Germans well, our guys will get maybe a little bit better treatment. And they did get a little bit better than the Russians, who were just starved and shot. But they were a bargaining chip. But it made practical sense to treat them as well as we could. But it was not the Waldorf Astoria. Yeah?
By contrast, at the Battle of Stalingrad, the Russians captured, I think, over 100,000 German prisoners.
Yeah.
Okay, almost all of them, not almost, but all of them were sent to Siberia. Paulus the Sixth Army. They were all sent to Siberia. And in '53, they were finally released, and only 5,000 survived out of 100,000. They worked them to death.
So again, you can contrast us to the Russian front. This is why the Germans at the end were looking for Americans to surrender to.
Oh yeah, they fight.
Yes.
Were there any ladies that came over as POWs?
I have not discovered that in Michigan. I'm not saying that it didn't happen. They would have been completely segregated out for sure. I have not heard of women prisoners of war. There were women camp personnel.
Russian.
And there was a certain amount of fraternity. But I never heard, that's a good question. Invite me back and I'll have an answer to that. That would have caused all kinds of new problems, I'm sure. Yes?
You mentioned Germfest and Midland. Those aren't on the map, actually?
Well, the map is not perfect.
I was wondering.
At Germfest was not technically, it was O-Train would be the German camp near there. They came over to play at Germfest. Germfest was a CO camp.
And then Midland?
Midland, is that on there somewhere?
Mount Pleasant is base. I lived up there. Mount Pleasant and Bay City are, but
yeah, I'm thinking of the town where it is. There are some, if I had the list in front of me, there were camps right around there.
Mount Pleasant and Bay City are with it.
Yeah, there were 2 or 3 camps right there, kind of. And one question I've never been able to resolve, there don't seem to be a lot of camps in the upper lower peninsula.
Yes, there.
Somebody speculated we had a lot of secret stuff going on around there, and there's some military installations, and maybe they wanted to keep them away from there.
Really?
What is that, sugar beet country, or it's everything country?
Bay City, sugar beet country. And
Yeah.
smell it in the fall.
Yeah. In Fremont, Michigan, you can smell steamed prunes and peas and all that. Baby food capital. Other comments, questions? Okay, the climax of the event here, we're going to have Joe say a few words just about why you're here tonight and Robert's here.
Well, my dad was a prisoner of war, and he fought for the Italian army, and he was captured in Tunisia.
Yeah.
And he was shipped over to Michigan. And my understanding, he went to the state fairgrounds, but you also said he probably went to Fort Wayne. And during the, I think during the prisoner of war camp, I think that's when they flipped, Italy flipped, and Mussolini got
43.
you know what happened to Mussolini.
Yeah.
And so they told the Italian soldiers that they would have to stay in the camps, but that they could go out.
A lot more freedom
and
now.
more freedom and work and then come back to the camp. Well, my mom was Italian American, and her mother was saying, hey, they're having dances for the Italian soldiers at St. James over here and wherever, and my dad would go and my mom would go, and they fell in love, and that's why Andrew is that's his grandson, and my sister Margaret and my brother Robert are here, and I have two other brothers and sisters, and that's why we're here. After the war, my dad had to go back to Italy.
They all had to be repatriated.
Yeah.
They had to go back.
They had to go back.
Yep, some of them got-
So my mom took the boat back to Italy. Genoa, Italy is where my dad's from. And they got married in Genoa and then came back to America to raise a family. And so that's how we came.
So your mom was from Italy and she came over?
She was Italian American. Her mother was Italian.
And
Her
your
parents
father
were
was
here.
from Genoa, right?
Why did she have to go back there?
Columbus.
She went back to Italy to get married.
Oh,
Columbus.
Because that was part of my dad wanted to get married, and she said, well, I'll marry you in Italy, but you have to come back here to raise a family. So I could have been, if my dad didn't agree to that, he could have been back in Genoa. But so that's how we ended up here in Michigan.
Would you mind coming on my world tour?
But it's a great story.
I didn't know he was going to be here tonight.
Yeah, and we
great.
found out about this. And my dad, we went to the East Point Military Museum.
Yeah, it's good museum.
And we saw they have like a wall for the Italian soldiers, and I was looking, and I said, that looks like my dad. And sure enough, on that picture is a group photo of prisoner of wars, and I think it's at St. James. They had a dance for him, and my dad is right there in the center there.
Yeah, that's
So
great.
he's on that wall right there. And yeah, it's a great story.
At St. James in Ferndale?
I think so. That was the dance there, and we were there, yeah. But yeah, and my dad spoke broken English. Back then, my mom wanted the kids to teach my dad English. So he didn't teach us Italian. So we were trying to teach my dad English. So we were kind of bummed out about that, because now if you think twice, we could have been bilingual, Italian and American, but my dad would talk like 3 English words, 1 Italian word, an English word, and we knew what he was saying, but we didn't communicate back to him in Italian. And I always kind of asked questions about it, and he said that, I said, I expected him that it was a big battle, getting captured in Tunisia and Africa, but he said, no, there's no problem. They came and we just surrendered. Because they didn't really want to fight.
The
That's
Italians
right.
in particular were
Yeah.
pretty much, okay, we're done.
Yeah, we're done. He said, you know what, we didn't want to fight, we were in, and so he said they came, and he thought it was like the French, really, part of the French came and captured him, so, yeah.
Yeah, it's all free.
French forces.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he said it was like the French Boy Scout troops, He said it didn't take much, to get
There was no
Italians to-
battle.
Yeah, there was no battle, I thought there was a battle, but yeah. I
They fought in the First
don't
World
know
War,
if you
though.
guys can think of anything else.
Oh, wow.
What did he do after the war?
He was, well, and during the war, he was he was a cook. That was his part of his job, you know, the Italians would want to go out and work, like you say, at the farms maybe, or.
So he worked in the mess.
He was the cook for the soldiers.
But then afterwards.
Afterwards, he owned a store, candy store on Woodward Avenue. And him and the partner, and then something happened, and he got out of the business, and he became a maintenance man in St. Ambrose. And they retired from there.
First he worked at the C&G bar.
Yeah, C&G bar, he worked there.
I mean, he was always
Yeah,
cooked. He
he was cooking, and then he got his own store, and,
Because you gotta have a sponsor in order
Yeah.
to come here.
right, he had to have a
Once I got
sponsor
married,
to
we
get
had to
that.
stay in Genoa
Yeah.
until we had a sponsor, which was our cousin Tony Bruno.
Yeah.
The C&G bar.
And the C&G bar, and then that's how my dad.
So they were saying it was a battle to get back here. I mean, kind of a struggle.
Oh, yeah.
It
Yeah.
wasn't like I'm coming back.
No, they had to really be in love.
Yeah.
Fight a lot.
Right. Yeah.
What year would he have been at St. Ambrose?
Back in 19, from,
I graduated high school in '70, he was working there, so he
Yeah.
was there quite a while. He was there.
A lot of my family always.
Yeah.
remember.
Father Van Antwerp was there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's when-
yeah, from the 60s.
I didn't know they were coming.
Yeah, that's a neat story.
How about a round of applause? I'm actually working on yet another book. World War II is just endlessly fascinating. And I'm writing a book about Ernie Pyle. Raise your hand if you know who Ernie Pyle was. He was a household name, not so much now.
Indiana.
I'm following him from Sicily to Rome, the liberation of Rome. And he said, when he got to Sicily, the Italians were laying down their weapons and saying, "You got a cigarette, Americano? I got a cousin in Buffalo, if you know him, or in Flatbush, or on the east side of Detroit." So the Italians never hated the Americans. And the other reason to treat these guys well, particularly the Germans, when they go back, they're going to be rebuilding these devastated countries. And it's good if they have a good idea about America, and a good idea, goodwill, and also understand what democracy is a little bit. They did have classes in democracy. They flopped. You could sign up, you could take all kinds of various classes if you were behaving well in these camps. But you can take a class, how a bill becomes a law, how boring. They signed up and they slept. They thought that they might get to go home sooner if they signed up. But my feeling about it is they learned about democracy through their interactions with ordinary people who treated them decently. And they went back with a very positive attitude about America. And I taught for 6 months in Rome, and so many Italians of that generation say, thank you. They love America for a number of reasons, but one of them is our decency. And so it's a great story, and Michigan has a piece of that. Wow, this has been quite memorable. It's a lot different than my day job. Right? Now the Marshall Plan was, Harry Truman said, don't call it the Truman Plan, call it the Marshall Plan. They hate me down at Capitol Hill. I could talk history with you guys forever. Thank you again. I do have the Detroit in World War II and the new one, the Michigan POW camps, if you want me to sign a copy, $20 a throw. I'll come back and talk about the Ernie Pyle book next time.
Do you want to, in case people have questions they want to email, do you have an email they can
I
contact
have an
you?
email, I've got cards, I'm at the University of Detroit Mercy, and you can also buy the book on Amazon, but I'm easy to find, I'm at the University of Detroit Mercy. Give yourselves a hand for coming out. I'm glad we didn't have a polar vortex tonight.